assisting or promoting the cytokine storms that the virus thrives on.
And I just got an email from our resident doctor in the house saying that people really should have a serum level done before they up their dosage of vitamin D.
Oh, yeah, you got to be real careful about this, especially since there won't be any recovery system if you have to do this kind of thing at the time that I'm suggesting. In other words, the dollar is expected to cause huge problems in the healthcare system, everything from pharmaceuticals all the way down through how local hospitals operate over the course of summer and into fall. They'll be hit first, or harder perhaps, and a little bit earlier than the general population, simply because so many of the healthcare components within our system at the moment are not only dollar dependent, they're dollar derivative dependent, they're interest rate dependent, and they're also foreign exchange rate dependent in the sense that we have to purchase stuff that is then used to make medicines, and then we import it, and there's this huge long chain of events that all occur around the dollar, and fluctuations in the dollar at these levels cause ripples in that system. And that's actually part of the problems that are attempting to be addressed by Obama and the administration now, although you never hear them really speaking of it. Their attempts to, quote, fix the healthcare system, and they're citing costs and so on, but they're not really discussing the underlying system that's being broken, which is the dollar system. And until that's fixed, any attempt at fixing healthcare is even worse than a Band-Aid because you're covering up a symptom that you really need to know about. So you stop the bleeding there, but it's going to erupt somewhere else.
Well, it's almost like we know that the powers that be control both healthcare and the dollar. I mean, the Rockefellers literally invented the cures for cancer that are most common these days. And if he's trying to revise it, it seems to me that the profit is going to be taken out of healthcare. And I can't imagine that the powers that be like that idea.
I wouldn't think that they would support it. I would agree with you there.
Yeah, any more than they like the idea of him taking over the Federal Reserve. And so
they may not care so much about that. The issue here is that they know that paper currencies have a finite lifespan, and they've done everything they could to extend the lifespan of the dollar as far as they can, knowing full well that it was an inevitable that the dollar would fail. Absolutely inevitable. And they just had to have some other mechanism or something in place at the time that occurred. Now, I think that, so they may not really care about the Fed. They may just say, throw them to the pack, give it to the mobs and let them eat this because we don't care about it anymore.
But don't you think that enough people around the world know that the Fed and all central banks are owned by this elite? I mean, it seems they are kind of naive to think that we're not going to blame them once everything crashes.
But see, if in the there's two components going on there. There's a huge unawakened mass that would just see the cause of their problems as the Fed and would expend lots of energy getting, quote, revenge on the middle tier minions, the bankers and the people that work at the Fed and this kind of stuff. So that is going to eat up a lot of energy, which buys the power elite some extra time. Plus, the power elite in the meantime, while all this is going on, are doing everything they can to ensconce themselves in nice, safe areas where they don't really have to worry about us.
So, in their wonderful underground castles under Ayers Rock and the Denver airport and places like that, is that what you're talking about?
No, I was actually thinking more in terms of the more prosaic, where they've promised people, escape in, as you say, in Australia and so on, but just above ground kind of deal. The whole underground stuff is really rather disturbing because, of course, humans cannot exist underground beyond a single generation.
Yes.
And so since we can't breed underground, any attempt to go and survive underground is not a multi-generational process and can only be done for a few years. And then there's other issues beyond the whole not being able to breed. There's also the destruction of the health. I've heard from some people that they claim to know, there were medical professionals that were involved in treating, they're sort of kind of like whistleblowers. They just sent me this little thing and it confirms, this little email, and it confirms some of the stuff that I'd seen elsewhere and some of my own thoughts on the issue. But it turns out that these people are treating a wide number of diseases that are existent in government workers who have to work in underground facilities that are beyond 40 feet deep. And it seems that, I mean, they're treating everything from eczema to early onset arthritis and all these other issues that seem to relate to not actually being able to be in contact with the sun and being connected to the rhythms there. And so they just had prepared this paper for the government. Government just basically blew them off. And one of the guys sent me some of the research that they used, and it's rather fascinating. And they're both medical professionals, doctors that have been treating these individuals for 20-plus years within the government structure, and they're not trying to be whistleblowers per se. They just thought it was very interesting that not only do humans lose the ability to produce the breeding hormones, both male and female, testosterone falls as well as estrogen and progesterone in women, but people start suffering effects in as little as 2 years of continuous underground work that can't be isolated to things like ultraviolet light coming from fluorescent tubes, because they've tried all of that.
Mm-hmm. So in other words, there is no sunlight invention that can go underground.
And it may be that it's not light per se, but something that we can't perceive within the frequency of the light, some electrical connection to the sun. Who knows exactly at what level it will settle on an understanding of it, but you're correct. There is no invention that will substitute for the human to be able to be in contact with the external environment that gets them close to the sun some way.
That is amazing. I've never heard that. I was absolutely certain that, that they had invented something like that.
Well, I'm certain that they are of the opinion that it's okay to be underground and they'll be safe and it looks good and, it's a nice little house-like environment and so on.
Mm-hmm.
However, there does appear that there's evidence to support long-term non-exposure to the sun is very bad for the continued health, and it brings out all kinds of what we might think of as syndromes or symptomatic diseases of an uneasy state, not necessarily a disease per se. So some people are manifesting it as huge outbreaks of eczema, and they've never had it before. Other people are apparently getting arthritis at a very early age that's deforming joints. And it's actually, the curious part of it is that when they go away on vacation, they don't have a problem. They come back from an extended vacation, they go back to work. They don't have that problem immediately, but it reappears in shorter and shorter time periods the longer they've existed in this underground environment. So the longer they work at some of these facilities, even though they're taking appropriate amounts of time out in the sun, the impact of the lack of sun hits them quicker each time they come back.
Yeah. Clif, I put your swirlies up, and I know changing the subject real quickly, but I was watching those before we came on, and they really are, I don't know, there's something going on. What if well, first of all, let's describe what swirlies are. I'll let you take that.
Sure. There's two kinds of crop circles that are appearing. Some are geometric and some are non-geometric shapes. And we've decided to take the geometric shapes and put them in a software program, an image of them, and spin them about in various different ways because they appear to want to be spun. Basically, that's kind of it. So we're taking pictures of crop circles, reducing them to bitmaps. We've got a couple of people working on software. The software will spin it clockwise, counterclockwise, various different center orientations at various different speeds. And some people are reporting very interesting effects from these, both in their meditation as well as in their physical form.
Well, I certainly noticed it. They are very, they're very relaxing. And I literally felt myself folding in on myself, going inward, but
Sure.
It was a physical feeling.
Yeah, you start losing the feeling you're describing is where you lose that internal chatter. The monkey mind quiets and pretty soon there are no words.
That's right. So what has anybody said any, reported any miraculous, how do I want to put it, the aha, now I understand.
Not so far as has been reported to me. We've gotten, curiously, there's a whole lot of people in Holland that are just enthralled with it. And we've got a couple of people in Holland that are saying that one guy who's an active meditator, his arthritis in his legs from sitting for years and years is going away. Another guy is actually saying that the deforming in his hands from his arthritis, his fingers are straightening, and he's rather enjoying that part. And it could be that indeed the swirling of the crop circles does aid this. Now, both of these guys are active meditators, and the one fellow says about 2 to 3 minutes exposure of the crop circles swirling in a counterclockwise direction will be with him for nearly an hour in his meditation. And it's really aided that. So it's probably an indirect effect. In other words, the swirling crop circle probably doesn't change the bones in his hands so much as his meditation is so much deeper, so much more effective that he's doing it himself.
Okay. Hold on. We'll get back to talking about swirlies with Clif High from Half Past Human. Go over there to Half Past Human. Look for swirlies down at the bottom of the page, and you'll find out what we're talking about. This is Raylan Allen. I'm talking with Clif High from Half Past Human. We're talking about what his WebBot predictions have seen. And at the moment, we've been talking about swirlies, which are geometric crop circles that are swirling. Now, who in the world invented that program for you? Did you do that?
I had one version out. The guy who wrote the current version that we're handing out is from Australia, a mad dog down there, a programmer who's got other operations going on and cats all over the place. And he is known as Mr. Meow. And Mr. Meow kindly provided the code base that we liked the best. My version had too many glitches in it in terms of shipping it out to customers because it was too large. The real issue moving these bitmaps around at a technical level because of various different kinds of graphic libraries you have to have. But it was my original idea, and I sort of formed this international collective, what we call a self-organizing collective. People could come in and help and so on. And actually, we need somebody to take it over at the moment. I need to transfer the whole Swirlies program to someone so that they can manage it, get more bitmaps in there and so on, because I've got to go into other work. So if any of your listeners are technically literate and have an interest in these Swirlies and would like to be the home of it, let me know. We'll be happy to pass it on to you. Also, before we get off the subject of crop circles, we should really discuss for a few minutes the remarkable series of non-geometrics that have shown up this year, if that's okay.
Absolutely. I mean, I thought the latest
one... We started off
one...
with the jellyfish there, right?
Yes.
900 foot long or something, and we had the jellyfish, and we had the dragonfly, and then we had the three fishes, and then we've had the phoenix most recently.
The phoenix is just incredible.
Yes, and there's some really interesting things about this because I've been thinking about it and looking at them as they were all appearing because I've been paying very special attention to crop circles this year because I actually expect that this is the year that we'll be given a really good message here. And so I think that whoever is providing the crop circles is now aware of a level of attention, that 1 or 2% of the populace that's paying attention kind of a deal. And so they're going to start feeding us more information in this process of teaching us their language of symbols. And if we go all the way back and look at the jellyfish, it is not, as many people said, a Portuguese man-o-war, which is not a jellyfish at all. It's a siphonophore, a collection of organisms that all get together and exist as an independent creature. Now, it's curious that we do have jellyfish, or that we do have Portuguese men-o-war invading the Mediterranean for the first time ever en masse this year. And it looks like they'll colonize and take over there. But the jellyfish that is shown is unique. It appears to be one of what's known as the sea nettle variety. Now, there's a common thread that runs through all of these, and it'll take just a second to explain, and they all lead up to the phoenix. But it's all about transformation and metamorphosis, because the nettle jellyfish style, especially those in the Pacific, but also in the Atlantic and other seas, these sea nettles spend a lot of their life on the bottom of the ocean. They don't exist their whole life in the jellyfish form that we're familiar with. They exist first as these polyps, and then eventually go to, if you want to think of it in a strange way, the fruiting body, the reproductive body, which is the jellyfish itself. But probably, well, it varies, but a significant portion of their life is spent on the bottom of the ocean. And so here they go through a metamorphosis, and then they end up as this free-floating jellyfish. Now we get to dragonflies. Same is true of dragonflies. Dragonflies spend most of their life